Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Lucrezia Corner. Thank you very much, Jessica, for the presentation. And thank you for BlockDown for organizing these wonderful discussions on a regular basis during this difficult period for all of us in terms of communications. So I'm really happy to introduce my wonderful co-panelists. So we have today Peter Chan, co-founder of Big Data Protocol, a Web3 project focused on sourcing and tokenizing data. Hi, Peter. How do you do today?
Hi, great to be here.
Awesome. We have Benny Isenbert, Chief Marketing Officer of Concordium. Hi, Benny.
Hey, guys. Super happy to be here too.
Awesome. So we just covered actually 3 different continents, 3 of us. I guess the last but not least, Dave Corner, blockchain business development lead of API 3. Hi, Dave. How do you do today?
Nice to be here.
Awesome. So our topic today is a very trendy one. So Web3 is actually one of the biggest search trends in Google these days. And I see that the PR agency that brought us this event is positioning themselves as the Web3 PR agency. This is really exciting because I guess even 1 year ago, like Web3 wasn't a part of mainstream vocabulary. So my first question to you is, what, in your opinion, created this big boom in interest in Web3? And the title of our panel is The Future of Decentralized Internet. But I guess the question is also why we actually coming to the conclusion that the future of internet is decentralized. Whoever wants to start.
I would like to jump in if this is possible. And thank you for this question. I mean, the concept of Web3 is very interesting from a pure, I would say, also philosophical, question. Because we were promised a couple of times in our, digital history for a kind of big revolution that will change the way we are consuming, that will change the way we are living in society. And if we are speaking about the third version of the web or the third version of the internet, it means that the 2 first were not, that fitting what we were looking for, so to speak. I think that the main challenge of Web3 is to define, if you allow me, the new digital social contract that will have, to be used in order to live in a new kind of society altogether, while we respect, several missions and several values together. So this is, for me, I would say, the basic, challenge. It's how Web3 approach could help us to become, a better humanity toward, the metaverse, because very soon the machines will take over and the human part of the decision-making process will disappear. That's, for me, the biggest challenge, I would say.
Yeah, thank you for this reflection. It's definitely an interesting but also challenging ordeal for all of us. On the personal level, Peter, how did you come to exploring the concept of Web3, and what was your path this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I really wanted to explore is the intersection of big data and DeFi. We saw the rise of liquidity mining last summer, right, with the rise of YAM. And you're really making things liquid that's like a food coin, which is not really that valuable. And then on the other hand, you have data, which is highly valuable, but it's illiquid. So basically the thesis is, how can we make something valuable liquid at the same time? And that's basically the genesis of Big Data Protocol. And if you go back to kind of your question and to Benny's answer, I mean, I think the point of Web3 is that it's supposed to be an evolution over what we have now, right? So how does Web3, tackle the problems that are kind of inherent in the web today, in the data industry? Because I think data really is a new asset class, right? When you look at these big tech corporations, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google. I mean, it looks like they're different companies on paper, but in reality, they're all data companies, right? They're valuable because they're able to monetize the data that they have. And I mean, if you look at like Facebook, Google, Robinhood, they're all free for users to use, yet they're all worth tons of money precisely because of this monetization of data. So it's like data is very valuable, but there's actually a lot of problems with the data industry that I think Web3 can tackle. And I don't want to take up too much time just right off the bat, but basically, you know, if the problems with data right now are that it's siloed, it's highly illiquid, there's no price discovery, so it's hard to price data, and it's actually hard to move around, even though data is digital. So I think those are the problems that Web3 could tackle.
Yeah, thank you very much for your thoughts. Yeah, I totally agree with you that data is definitely key for the future of a lot of industries and of the economy in general. It's not by chance that the previous panel that Alex moderated was actually focused on monetizing data, because in the end, data is actually money of the future. Like the current money system, monetary system, is in imagined order based on what we apply to the value of any currency, while data is something that has a value per se. So Dave, what about you? How did you like you deal with the kind of traditional web phenomenon that is API? How do you bridge this two web worlds, 2.2, 3.2?
So API3 is a project that's dedicated to helping existing Web2 API providers provide data to Web3 in a trustless way, effectively, or in a way that doesn't involve any middlemen or any traditional third-party Oracle nodes. So we see the future of Web3 as being something that needs people building dApps and building things that people can actually use and interact with. And we see the main barrier to that not being something like transactions per second or transaction cost per se, but lack of availability of data. If you look at the applications you use on your phone, most of them are composed mainly of different APIs, and most of the functionality they use comes from APIs. So if you want to build trustless versions of them or new protocols, it makes sense to try and bring as many of these APIs to Web3 as possible. So API3 currently has over 150 API providers who are available as a first-party Oracle. So we've created software that they can run themselves. So you're calling data directly from the API provider rather than using a middleman layer where you have to disintermediate third-party Oracle nodes. And we're trying to bring as much data on-chain as possible so that the next generation of dApp builders have much more to work with, and they can start creating applications that help further Web3's adoption. And we're very bullish long-term on that as a thesis. We think that people will start to make really interesting things soon, because you see what people do just with price data. They've created the whole DeFi world on that. And you can create trustless parametric insurance. You can create all kinds of other contracts with data that we have that's available. And I think we're starting to see the first parametric protocols that are arising as well. And I can't wait to see what the next generation of dApps bring.
Awesome, thank you very much. And I appreciate that all of you actually mentioned some challenges. It actually reflects the fact that we are still in such a early stage of building of this new ecosystem. It's very important for us to be aware of the challenges on our ways. I would like to highlight one challenge that, in my opinion, there is very important for any new industry, and I'm talking about education, especially applied to the Web3 ecosystem that is very depends a lot on the community power. So how do you think we as representatives of the industry can empower the community with all the tools that we can, and also how we can educate people so that they become part of this community? Because even if we talk about this as a open source and open to everyone platforms, I think we're still quite marginal because of some barriers related to education, to evaluating risks, and some just basic social fears that everyone, almost everyone, apart from visionary futurists, have when they are to deal with the new technologies and innovations.
I think something that's really important is to get the community involved in building and governing how things are decided. Because if you end up having things built just by teams in isolation, then you don't always end up be able to create a fully decentralized product or a product that the community has any interest in using long term. So for instance, API 3 is constructed as a DAO because we're very conscious that in order for data to be available in a trust minimized or trustless way, you need it to be governed not by a team that can change things unilaterally. So if we created software that we could disconnect, or if we ran oracles that we could point to a different API provider, that's a source of trust. And if you're doing that, then you're not really building in a way that I think optimizes what can be done for Web3. So yeah, so we try to get the community involved, and anybody can take part in governing what we do, make the decisions that we're making. And I think that's important to build for the long term.
I would say that to rebound on what you just say, education is the key. I mean, this is the X factor that we all are missing today, because you cannot build and teach in the same time. I mean, it's really complex to do these kind of things. But I would say that another barrier, I mean, or a kind of a subtopic of the educational part is the regulation thing. And I think that, once we will admit as an industry that in order to be mass adopted, we will have to play by some rules that we still can, define, and that we cannot stay outlaws for a long time anymore, because if not, I mean, we are not going to be able to reach, masses. Then once we are going to understand these kind of things in the industry, it will be easier to go and to look for new audiences and create new communities on the other side. And by the way, this is one of the challenges that Concordia, my company, has decided, to tackle. We are bringing an ID layer at the protocol level, enabling, every single user to be fully legally transacting on our system while he is or she is protecting, by the best encryption, systematic, systems like ZK-proof. But the concept of regulation as a tool for education in order to break the fear fence that is, just around us, could be also one of the solutions, to educate masses, saying that this is not dangerous, this is not illegal. You can and you must have the right to monetary diversity. And this is what we are building, all of us here on a daily basis, I would say.
I like very much this angle that regulation is part of education, because in the end, regulators also are educating themselves while they are exploring new developments, and then the others are getting their part of learning through what is regulated, and they definitely have more trust in like compliant industries. So Peter, what is your take on the community development and their interaction with the regulators?
Yeah, I would say that, your point, Christina, about education and community is right on, and it's super important. Basically, one of the missions of Big Data Protocol is to democratize access to data. So what this means is, let's take the Robinhood and the meme stock movement that we've seen recently, right? You've got retail, they're buying up stocks and options. How do market participants make investment decisions, right? If you're retail, maybe you go on Reddit, maybe you go on TikTok and you watch a video, or YouTube and you watch an influencer. That's one way to do it. But then you've got hedge funds, and what they do is, in addition to all the regular traditional financial metrics, they have access to very sophisticated data that they pay a lot of money for. And this data is something that they use to guide their investment decisions. So it's not really a fair fight, right? I mean, like one guy watching TikTok videos versus a fund, deploying using the latest cutting edge data. So what we want to do is kind of level the playing field, right, between retail and these sophisticated institutions. So we provide, so when we say like, oh, big data protocol, we're a marketplace where we have commercially valuable data. Well, these data sets are the same data sets that are used by these hedge funds. So it's democratizing access, it's leveling the playing field, it's making it possible for the community to win as a market participant and basically fight on more fair terms with these big institutions. So yeah, to your point, like education, super important, and benefiting the community in Web3 is super important.
Dear viewers, if you have any questions or comments, we will be all really happy to read those and give you our feedback. Benny, I think that you mentioned once that apart from regulations and compliance, what is very important for institutions to get involved is privacy orientation. Yes. Can you elaborate a little bit more, and how does it apply to what we are seeing in the Web3 ecosystem right now?
It's also a very key function of the Web3, I would say, a world that is, just in front of us. The concept of privacy is misunderstood today. A lot of people are speaking privacies when we speak about anonymity or secrecy or confidentiality. So it's good maybe, to put everything in order before we discuss privacy. Privacy is a human basic right. It is, if you think, about our Judean-Christian, identity, this is the first thing that Eve has done when she has tasted, the fruit of knowledge. She has hidden a part of her body, for privacy. It is something that is really well anchored in the human part of our existence. I think that, one of the biggest challenge of Web3 will be to establish this sensible balance between the mandatory privacy, financial privacy, users' privacy, you call it the way you want to call it, and the necessary transparency to be accountable for what you are doing. And this equation or this sensible balance is really not easy. And I think that what is fueling this balance is the whole concept of data. And by data, I'm not meaning, the stream of data between one party or another party, but I'm meaning more, the sovereign approach of a data. Who is the owner of a data? Where can you deploy it? Based on which right? And where can you, protect your privacy? That will be, the main questions that will pop very soon to us. But I think that a world based on the Web3 challenges that will be based on full transparency will be a catastrophe for our children and will be the best path for me, at least, to a fascist state of humanity. So privacy is a kind also of, synonym of freedom and individual, obviously, freedom.
I like this philosophical reflection. I also think that definitely privacy became a very important focus during the pandemic. Also in terms of what we actually mean by privacy of our data. Dave, Peter, do you think that this year, this is also a reason why Web3 is trending right now, is that we had this pandemic period during the last, gosh, I've already stopped counting those months. Almost 2 years, right?
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you talk about needing privacy. I think you don't necessarily have to have everything private and everything in the open. So I think having transparency available is something that's really good. And just because you have data that's on there, you can still retain ownership over that. So some Web3 protocols will allow you to use your decentralized identity. You can authorize accounts, you can gain access, you can log in places, and then you can revoke access yourself. So in a way, Web3 can, even in an open environment, give you total control over how your data is used. but also the private use cases are pretty important as well, I think. So I know that one of the advantages we have of having a first-party Oracle solution, which is where the data providers run their own Oracle to put data on chain, is that you can see data providers providing data to private smart contracts and enterprise smart contracts without that having to be publicly available and without it having to pass through a third party on the way to the blockchain. So with that, you can make data like open banking data, you can make sort of private medical records, you can make all of that available in a way that doesn't impinge on the person's privacy or give away any information that they don't want to give away, which is pretty key, I think, for long-term adoption. If banks are going to build on blockchain, they need something like this. If people are going to build dApps that use personal information, they need a guarantee that that won't be stored in an immutable public record for the rest of their lives. So yeah, I think both are useful.
Yeah, I think privacy, compliance, regulatory, it's one of the reasons that makes data very hard to move around. I mean, even though data is digital, it's very siloed. For anybody, I mean, there are so many privacy laws, different regulations in different countries regarding how you can use data, that it's very hard for traditional institutions to actually move data around or buy it or sell it. For a data buyer, they regularly take months or even up to 2 or 3 years to acquire a single data set. So it's extremely difficult the way that it's done now. And I think that's one of the ways that Web3 could kind of facilitate the transfer of data and basically the transactions involving data, so that data can truly be an asset class, and it's something that can be freely used in the market as opposed to just kind of tightly controlled by a few big corporations.
If we get back to the general question of the future of decentralized internet or the future of internet as decentralized ecosystem, I feel that we are still there are a lot of people in this space for whom, of course, it's obvious what is the value of Web3. But for the majority of people around us, or at least around me, blockchain space is associated with Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and maybe that's all. So when people ask me what is Web3, I'm usually giving them a parallel with the politics. So basically, Web3 is a democracy where every actor, every user has a voice and can be a creator in this new sort of internet ecosystem. What would be your way of presenting the value of Web3 for those who do not understand yet what can be brought, and what would be your advices for those who want to learn more and who want to contribute, to get on board, to start experimenting and exploring? Dave.
Okay, so I think I'll answer your question about the best way to get involved. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm a DAO member. I work for API3, but I would say the best way to get involved in Web3 is to join a DAO. There are DAOs for more or less everything, and it gives you a very good insight into how governance can work for blockchains. And the governance side of things can lead to something that I think is also pretty important for Web3, which is kind of disintermediating everything from the traditional kind of companies model. If you get involved in a DAO, you'll start to see how the dynamics work. You'll get a handle on voting, on how decentralized organizations can exist, see how they grow, see how they evolve. And also through that, you'll start speaking to other people who can either give you more information about other protocols or get you links and get you talking to other projects. So, and I find most people in DAOs are pretty open and pretty aware that everybody starts off as a community member, right? Nobody's
Let's dissect it even further. How do you join a DAO? I also think that DAO is not a part of everyone's vocabulary yet.
Okay, sure. So a DAO is just a decentralized autonomous organization. Basically, it's an organization that people can vote, and if the vote passes, then an action can happen. So for instance, for API3 DAO, We have to propose that we get grants to cover a certain period of us working. And we propose why, we set deliverables, we say what we've done in the past, we justify the amount that we're asking for based on salary guidelines that the DAO has passed or grant guidelines the DAO has passed. And then that goes up for the community, for all the token holders who staked, they can vote. And if that vote passes, then you get given the grant to work for a period of time for the DAO. But that can apply to anything. So if somebody develops a website or a tool that the DAO can use, then the DAO can vote to give them a grant retrospectively for that as well. And the DAO can vote to decide long-term courses of action too. So it's about a shared consensus for things going forwards, and anybody being able to turn up. So you could go to our forum and say, I would like to be paid this much to be to work for API 3 and do anything. And if people thought that that was a value add, then they'd say yes, and then you're working for a DAO. And obviously, that does happen. But the fact is that just getting involved in that kind of a community where you try to encourage people to step forward, try to encourage people to do it, and there's no barriers to that happening, I think is the most useful way of doing it.
Well, Dave, to echo your thoughts, I think the best way for an individual to learn about Web3 is just to play with the protocols,
yeah.
Right? Play with DeFi, mint NFTs, go crazy in the metaverse, just play with things and use them. I think really where Web3 really shines is where we have, the current Web2 is really lacking, right? So like right now, it's very hard to get yield. If you deposit at a bank, in a bank account, you're getting next to zero interest rate on your deposit. You just go on DeFi, you go on Compound, Aave, now you're getting a whole lot more. You're getting, 5, 6, 7%, pretty decent. So it's like, that's an area where the current system is lacking and where Web3 really excels. And same for institutions, because this is, we're focused on data. For an institution, it takes them so long and it takes them so many steps to get access to data that it's actually worth it for them to jump through the hoops of Web3 to get at this data, right? I mean, we know all of the obstacles in Web3, like getting a wallet, securing your wallet, paying high gas fees. Those are all obstacles, and it can be technically challenging as well. But then Web3 can only be useful where the existing legacy way of doing things is just truly broken, right? So like in the data arena, if it takes months or years to diligence data, to negotiate an agreement, to onboard a data provider, and then process data and clean it, and then only then do you get to use it, well, that's pretty broken. And so, it's worth it for you to pay the gas fees, to learn how to use MetaMask, because that's actually so much less painful than the current way of doing things.
I would like to jump in also, but to respectfully disagree with both of you, and at least on the first part. I mean, you are speaking about, MetaMask and DAO and all those things. And I must admit that I tend to agree with you because I'm a part of this industry. But, if we try to convince ourselves only, we didn't do a lot of things. And I would like to share with you, my experience. I'm every Friday morning, I'm going to a different school in my city, and trying to teach about Bitcoin. Some kids. This is, some stuff I'm doing for the last, I would say decade. And I'm being asked every Friday, what is decentralization? Why decentralization is so important? And I think that, users in the end of the road, they don't care for the technology. They don't care, they don't know how an iPhone is built, what kind of chip they have there, what kind of resolution of the screen they have. They want to know what kind of benefit it is bringing to them on a daily basis. This is how we would be able, to convince them to use or to discover. I would say that, decentralization is bringing something that is missing for a long time now, and this is trust. We don't trust each other anymore. We don't believe in our politics anymore. We don't believe in our states anymore. We don't believe in the vaccine, or we are for the vaccine. And I think that by decentralizing, the the whole concept of decision making and data and dealing also with transaction where we can show that you don't need a middleman in order to gain trust. You can bring technology that will enable you to get the necessary trust and thus freedom. Then I think we will be making a little bit more to explain why decentralization as a technology approach is needed now. Maybe in 10 years from now, when the quantum gap will come, decentralization will be completely, caduc. I think that it will be the case. But at the moment that we are talking, if we want, a world that is a little bit fairer, beyond good and evil, if I might, quote Nietzsche, then we need, to bring decentralization as a kind of guarantee for the trust that is missing in Web 2.0 and Web 1.0.
Trust is fundamental. I really like this reflection around trust. I guess we have a few minutes left. So my very last question to you is a little bit futuristic. So if we talk about the Web3 in a year, what you would like us to talk about as the real use cases and applications, and what do you think the Web3 will look like in a year?
I will answer first. I think, can we dream together a little bit? I mean, I think that dream is a part of what we are doing. Let's say that in 1 year, the UK will say that they're going to digital, the British pound, and we will be able to create a liquidity pool, based on real data between, the digital pound and any other cryptocurrency that will be obviously in the new digital social contract with the regulation. So the moment that, the legacy world will be connected to the crypto world, I think Web 3.0 would have been, fulfilling, its mission. So that's my humble dream for 1 year from now.
Peter, what's your dream?
I want to see millions and millions of new users onboarded to Web3. That's what I want to see. I want to see easier UI. I want to see wallets that are easy to use. I want to make it so that when people access Web3, they don't even know they're doing it. It's seamless. They don't know if it's Web3 or Web2. It's just that easy to use. That's what I want to see.
Cool. I want to see different kinds of data brought to Web3 so people can build dApps using them that aren't just DeFi. DeFi in itself is amazing, but apply that to everything else and all the other kinds of data, and we'll see what developers can come up with. And I think really where we are now is like the early days of the internet, where it was cat websites and everybody blogging, but nobody reading it, and nothing really being built of any use. And people thought the internet was going to go in 2000. They could see it being a passing fad. And look where we are now. And I think that's where we are with blockchain. We're at the early days, people are using it, people are building things on it, but I want to see how that evolves over the next year.